Born to be wild.
Hello and welcome back, everybody, to Born to be Wild's United in Stormwind card review from a wild perspective. We had just wrapped up the Hunter class, and now we are moving on to the Mage class, which will be led by Hydra Sheep.
All right, so we have a new theme, it seems. Well, we do have a new quest line that we're going to be talking about later, but our first card is Hot Streak, and so it talks about playing fire spells. So we've got a bit of a theme of playing fire spells going on here. So our first card is 0 mana spell that reads, your next fire spell this turn costs 2 less. So it seems that there is a new archetype being built in Mage that is promoting playing your fire spells. Now, for this card, it's 0 mana. So I feel like 0 mana cards are something you always kind of want to be afraid of in Wild. However, I don't know if this is going to be an archetype we are going to see in Wild. We already have very fast decks that either are playing, with Mozaki and Flamewaker. This is something that definitely could go along with that, provided you were playing more fire spells, but you're playing other things like Ray of Frost and that sort of thing. So I don't think that you're going to slot this in something like that. Yes, it's free, but I think when you discover this card, then it might help you cycle, but it's not something that I'm going to put in a deck. So, not particularly something that I think is going to slot in anything we have right now, but it's free. If I get it off of Evocation or I discover it, sure, I will cycle it. If I'm playing Stargazer Luna, it'll help me to continue cycling, but I don't think that this is going in a current Wild deck that we have. Sheep, what do you think?
Yeah, my initial thought, like you, was Mozaki or APM Mage. So I looked at both of those deck lists. They don't run fire spells. So I was like, okay, that's out. So if Fire Mage becomes a thing, which is, the archetype that they're kind of pushing for standard, then maybe. But the big payoff card for that is just so inconsequential for Wild that I just don't really see it here. So 0 mana card, discounting something going forward. If we get more fire spells and more fire spell synergies going forward, then maybe, but for right now, How about you, Nate?
Yeah, I think it was NHL who said that, you want to evaluate a card based on what it does itself, not what it requires to combine with. Okay, cool. If I have a Flame Strike that costs 7 and I play this, then my Flame Strike costs 5. But yeah, that relies on me to draw the Flame Strike, right? And then I'm going to have this thing sitting in my hand for turn after turn after turn. And I don't know. And like you, I looked at this fire spells and it's okay, Fireball, Combustion, Flame Strike, Wildfire. And do I really care to make any of those cost less? No. I racked my brain on this. My note literally says I don't see it. I just don't see it.
I have the answer. In Even Mage, you can Hot Streak Wildfire and then ping on turn 1.
Hey, all right, you solved the puzzle.
All right, so the archetype that we currently have, yes, it's a 0 mana spell. I'm only going to play it if I discover it, so that's a 1 for me.
Yeah, you said it. Great, it's a 1 for me as well. How about you, Nate?
Yeah, that's a 1. I can't even figure out where to play it, so I don't.
Yeah, that's the thing, right? Unfortunately, it's 0 mana, but it's no home.
Yeah.
Well, keeping with the theme, our next card is Prestor's Pyromancer. So it's a 2 mana 2/3 minion with the battle cry, your next fire spell has damage +2. So here's the problem. It says your next fire spell has damage +2. Now, we already have ways of increasing our spell damage that encompass all of the damage spells, not just exclusively to fire. So I don't see this, doing anything. Is there a chance that if you play this and then you play what's the one that increases your hero power? Would that work?
Wildfire.
Wildfire.
Yeah. So no, it's just I'm sorry. It's just like I can't think of anywhere to put this card. I don't think it's very good. It's got your base, River Croc stats. It does not have a home. Sheep, what do you think?
So Presser's Pyromancer has a slight upside in that since it's a battle cry and it's not your next fire spell this turn, if I play this on 2 and then insert random fire spell that costs 3 here the very next turn, even if Presser's Pyromancer was dealt with, that fire spell has spell damage +2.
Good point.
Cool. Yeah, it's not worth it though. Like, maybe in standard where they have a smaller pool and a higher density of the things available of fire spells. Yeah, maybe, but we have other things that we want to be doing. In Wild in particular. So I wonder how Prester's Pyromancer works with explosive runes, right? Because explosive runes is a fire spell, but it's a secret. So does then whenever that goes off, it have the additional 2 spell damage? Kind of interesting.
I double dog dare you to put this in Secret Mage and find out.
Oh gosh, it's such a bad idea. Such a bad idea. But since you've double dog dared me, if you remind me, because I'm going to forget. If you remind me, I'll do it.
And wait till you get Legend and just do it in Legend, and people are going to be like, "What are you doing?"
The only redeeming factors I see on this card is what Sheep already said, that it says your next fire spell. It's not like, typically we see one of these cards and it's like spell damage +2 and it's just a static effect. And this, this carries over and that's good, but it's contingent on fire. Like this would be okay if it said your next spell has spell damage +2.
Yeah.
And the fire spells are limited. Like, okay, cool. With a Pyroblast for 12, that's nice. But like, I just don't see it. Like, okay. I think what Hydra mentioned earlier, are they creating a new standard archetype of fire mage? Like, maybe, but I don't necessarily see that many fire spells, even with the new set. And the quest line is not necessarily, doesn't really work along with this either. I have an interesting idea for the quest line that I'll try to sell you guys on later. But this card just sucks.
Yeah, agreed.
In my opinion.
Well, let's go around with the rating. I am going to give this a 1. Sheep, what do you think?
Uno.
Yeah, 1 for me as well.
All right. Well, let's move on to our next card, which is a mage spell. For 4 mana, it is called Fire Sail, and it is tradable, and it reads deal 3 damage to all minions. So this is basically a Hellfire that doesn't do damage to either your face or your opponent's face. It is also tradable, which I think is really cool because you can, if you draw this at the right time, you're going to use it to clear the board. And if not, toss it back. You don't need it right now. Yeah. You're looking for Reno, right? Like I feel, or you're looking for Luna's Pocket Galaxy or something that this to me is going to be in a Reno Mage deck. And like as a one of, obviously, I think that it's definitely an inclusion. I think that it's an early board clear that you can either throw back and do something else if you get it later in the game. I really, really like this card. I don't see much of a downside, especially if you're playing it in more of a control-y deck, because while it does damage to all minions, including your side of the board, if you're just playing control, I may not have a board, right? I may just be clearing your board at this time, and I'm trying to get to what I want to do, which is like play LPG and wreck you afterwards. So I think this card is great. Sheep, what do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. Agreed on all counts. I especially like the fact that this is tradable. I can keep this in the mulligan if I'm queuing into something like Druid. Okay. Is this aggro Druid? Cool, then I want this. Oh, look, it's not aggro Druid, it's Celestial Alignment. Okay, then I can trade it. It costs 1 mana, but I can trade it and try and get to my LPG or anything like that. Fire Sale in particular is a really good example of how tradable can really shine, because in particular in the mulligan, I can keep something that's good for one archetype of a deck that I'm facing against, but not another, and not be too punished by it. And I think that's really cool. Other than that, everything that you said, Hydra, is on point. What do you think, Nate?
Oh, yeah, you hit the nail on the head. Like, I don't really have anything to add. I really like this card, though, as just some AoE. And like you said, hey, you realize you don't need it, ship it back. This is the perfect example of where tradable is good. And we've looked at other tradable cards so far, and so far, like, it hasn't mattered. It's like, well, who cares? And this is like, hey, I draw this and I want to use it. Great. I draw it and I don't want to use it. Send it back. This to me feels like it slots super easy into any sort of Reno deck or control deck. And if we really want to be meme lords, we can drop it in our even Mage. And but it's just a solid card. I like it a lot. It's sad that it hits your minions too, but like, that's fine. That's fine. So.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's score this card. Under our rulings, I give this a 4 because I feel like, well, this is not a meta-defining 5-star card, and it's going to somehow just rule the meta right away. I feel like you slot this right into LPG Reno style decks, like right now. You just throw it in. This is a 4-star card for me. Sheep.
Yep, completely agreed. It's a 4 for me as well. That means it sees play in a meta deck. There's a meta deck that loves this card. Easy peasy 4. How about you, Nate?
Yeah, my only like, I was teetering between a 3 and a 4 because when I see Mage, like the majority of the Mage is like Secret Mage, and you're not going to play, like, where I really see this being played is in your Reno or like LPG Mage decks, which make up a smaller portion of ladder. So I was teetering between 3 and 4 because I'm not going to play this in Mozaki. I'm not going to play this in Secrets or whatever. But I still think it's really good, and I would love to get to the point where we're playing any sort of Reno Mage, like, or any control deck in general, is just going to run this because it's solid. And so I'm fine giving it a 4. I think that the card itself, this is one of the better cards in this set.
Right on. 4 across the board then. Awesome. Yeah, I think it's a great card, and I think we're going to be seeing that card for sure. Okay, so up next we have a 1 mana spell, First Flame, that reads deal 2 damage to a minion and add a second flame to your hand. And to be noted, it is a fire spell, so it goes along with this theme that they're trying to push of playing the fire spells. So at first thought, when I looked at this, it's like a twin spell idea, right? I don't even know why it doesn't say twin spell on it, but it's I thought of Ray of Frost at first to compare it to, right? It's 1 mana. Now this deals the damage instantly of having to do the second one with Ray of Frost, right? So I wanted to compare it, but I almost think it's not worthy of just comparing. I think it's doing something different. So Ray of Frost, you can stall out bigger minions to get to where you want to go, right? Like you are stalling out till you have your combo, your Mozaki, till you've drawn everything. First Flame obviously can't take care of big minions. Like it just does the 2 damage that it does, but it's 1 mana deal 2, it's 2 mana deal 4. So it's actually quite a decent early game tool to deal with the board. You can get rid of those minions if you want, like right off the bat. So I think it's a pretty decent card. I don't think it's the same as Ray of Frost. I think it does something different. And I don't think it's a bad card. Sheep, what do you think?
Yeah, I agree all the way around. My initial notes were even basically less conditional Ray of Frost that just doesn't freeze. Which again, the freezing is the more impactful part of Ray of Frost, so don't at me there. It's definitely just the 2 damage aspect of that. Ray of Frost, of course, sees play in Mozaki and APM Mage. And honestly, I kind of think, whenever I was looking at those decks, kind of think we can pull out like maybe, and I'm not a huge Mozaki Mage player, so Ben from work or Doc or someone could probably correct me if I'm wrong, but like maybe we cut like Magic Trick, because we know with this that we're getting 2 1-mana spells that will then be able to just keep on going and continue to, you know, either buff up our Mozaki for a ton of damage all at once, or continue to draw and do Flame Waker ticks in APM Mage. So I think it probably slots in pretty nicely to that. There may be a different flex card that, you know,
I can talk on that
a little bit more well versed than I, like Nate, can speak on. But I think it's probably pretty strong, and I think it'll probably see play. Nate, where do you think it might see play?
Yeah, I see it in Mozaki for sure. We're not running Magic Trick anymore, and so the tricky thing is, okay, what do I pull? But maybe the Ruined Orb, I think, is where I pull this out. Like I agree. Like with Hydra, my first thought was comparing this to Ray of Frost because it has its similarities, but I also agree with you, Sheep, where especially if I'm seeing a bunch of like Dark Glare or something with these giant minions, the goal in Mozaki is to like stall until I can OTK you, and that's really what the Ray of Frost does. Is like, hey, you're giant 8/8, cool, you can't attack me with it. I'm not trying to kill you with it. But I like that there's some multi-use here with this card. Like it works to, you know, early game stall, like I can kill off these little minions or whatever, but it also works when I'm comboing off with Mozaki, that this card is going to cost me 0 mana, and I can, you know, my only complaint with this card is it can't go face. It says to a minion, and so, you know, that's a little bit of a bummer. And yeah, I have the artwork I love. The first time I have the token here as well for the second flame. It's just so cool. But yeah, I can see it going in Mozaki. That's what my notes say as well. And maybe we pull out a Ruined Orb or something. I'm not really sure what else. Like the list is so tight now that I don't know that there's really anything else that I can pull. But I think the card in and of itself is pretty strong. So I like it. I want to experiment with it before I really I'm sold on it, but I'll definitely try it. We'll talk about it in a couple of cards, but I've got some other hopes in terms of Mozaki. So maybe we can talk about scoring for this one.
Yeah, let's vote this one. So I feel like, well, this may not slot right into every meta deck, that we are going to play it and it will be seen. So for me, that is a 3-star card. Sheep.
Yeah, I'm completely lockstep in with you at the 3. How about you, Nate?
I gave it a 3 as well, actually. So that works out well.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, that's
well, not only that, but I'm looking at all of our Mage, and we are unanimous on all 4 of them so far, which is
nice.
cool.
Good. Hey, that's great. Hey, great minds think alike and all of that, right?
Yeah.
All right, well, let's move on to our next mage card, which is a minion. It is a 5 mana 4/5. Its name is Sanctum Chandler. After you cast a fire spell, draw a spell. So this is a 5 mana card that is a draw engine that is completely reliant on fire spells. This isn't Luna where you can just, keep chaining. You would have to completely play fire spells. Now I have seen the ability to do some OTK shenanigans with this. So like I don't know if that's going to be a thing, but this seems super slow unless you are going for some sort of OTK. Like other than that, I don't think that we're going to be seeing this card. What do you think about it, Sheep?
So I see an OTK with this pretty easily with two next that we'll talk about then.
Yeah.
Ignite. So it's draw, fire mage support, elemental, too slow for our format, but neat. So the OTK possibility with Ignite, I'll probably talk. I will talk about it more with Ignite because Ignite is the thing that actually does. This is the engine. Or this is the wheels, and Ignite is the engine, or vice versa. I don't know. The car allegory is kind of off, but regardless, they're two different parts. And here, this one's the draw. This one's the kind of like you can see how it's going to get there, but the Ignite is the one that'll actually do the thing. So it's definitely going to be wonky. It's definitely not going to be OP. It's definitely not going to be meta, but it's going to be fun. What do you think, Nate?
Yeah, kind of the same. When I saw this card, like I kind of the wheel spinning in my mind. Like tutoring is really good, right? We like targeted draw, and there's a limited number of fire spells, and so it's like, well, okay, if I'm gonna put this in my deck, it's for a very specific reason, and it's not Elemental Mage. It's it really, there will be an OTK kind of combo with it. How viable it is, I don't know. But there's definitely some potential there. There's some pretty good potential there. I'm not quite sure where this is going to fall yet, so I'm cautiously optimistic. The art is like pretty gross. So I like it. I like it.
It's like the Waxadrid, but
Oh,
elemental instead of dragon, and it's cute.
It is. It seems like, yeah. So we'll talk about the spell in just a second, but I mean, at the end of the day, it's a 5 mana 4/5 elemental, which is not bad. Like, so if I discover this off of something and then it happens to draw me a fireball or something, like I'm not complaining. But the only way I'm putting this in my deck on purpose is if I'm trying to OTK you with Ignite.
Yeah. So we're going to expand on that in a bit, but for now, we'll give a quick rating on this card. Myself, I'm going to give it a 2 based off of the fringe OTK applications that we're going to talk about in a bit. Sheep.
Completely with you on both the score of a 2 and the rationale. How about you, Nate?
No, I did the same. It's a 2 as well. I agree.
Okay, so before we get to that, we have another card to talk about. It is a weapon for Mage. It is a 2 mana 0/2 weapon called Celestial Ink Set with the text that reads, after you spend 5 mana on spells, reduce the cost of a spell in your hand by 5. Lose 1 durability. So I was looking at this card and I was trying to think, okay, what could I possibly want to reduce? And there's definitely things in Mage you want to reduce, like LPG, right? You want to reduce that. But now what are the odds you're actually going to hit the spell that you want to hit? That's kind of what bugs me about this. You're going to have to play your hand in a certain way, possibly quite suboptimally, to try to nail the card that you're trying to hit. It may not work. It just seems to me like there's better ways to reduce or play a big spell in Mage. We have other ways to do that, like with Dragon Caster and other things like that. And this has 2 durability. I don't mind that it's only 2 mana because, you may be stalling out and trying to, get to the late game. But it just, to me, seems pretty unreliable. Sheep, what are your thoughts on this card?
Yeah, it's really hard to evaluate because it's a powerful effect, but the only decks that really, the main deck, let me phrase it that way, the main deck that would want this effect is LPG Mage to try and discount LPG and get it out even earlier. Cool. LPG Mage is pretty minion centric because of obvious reasons. And the things that aren't are not really, they're either super cheap, which is cool, or they're there's not enough there, right? Like we would pretty much need all of our non LPG mages or LPG spells to play to discount LPG, in which case we could have just played Pocket Galaxy.
Yeah.
I don't know. Like I went through all of this to try and find a way to make it work in the meta deck, and just not really there. Where it might see some kind of play is like a no minion mage or something like that, because this isn't a minion, so it'll just continue discounting like all of the spell or a spell in your hand by 5, and everything that you play is either a spell or Celestial Ink set. But I don't think that's even going to be strong in standard. So I tried so many ways to try and find a way to make this work, and if someone else with a better read on the meta than I have can make it work, then cool. But I don't really see it. How about you, Nate?
I looked at this card and I said, wow, this card sucks. So the application is LPG Mage, and we've already got other cards that do that better, right? I've got Ink Master if I really want to meme out, or I've got Dragon Caster, or I've got this new card that we'll talk about in a minute. But like, it's not this. I'm not going to use this to set up. Like, this requires it reduces a cost of a spell in your hand, and so all right, so it's contingent on me drawing LPG. And then I gotta spend 5 mana on spells, which I'm barely running any spells in LPG anyways. It's mostly minions. And like, okay, cool. Like there's 2 mana on, or 3 mana on an ice block, and maybe a couple here, a couple there, but like that deck is so centric on minions that I just don't see it. And even then, like if we're talking no minion mage or spell mage, like I don't see it in that either. Because if I really wanted to reduce, like, then I'm going to play Deck of Lunacy. If I wanted to do that. I mean, I've got killed by Nagrand Slam so many times that I just, this is cute, but what I think about like the flavor, okay, like this is a weapon, it's an ink set. Like, can you imagine some mage like throwing this at some monster? Like, I'm gonna stab you with my pen.
It wasn't me.
Hey, loser. Oh man, that's great. No, people don't play Nagrand Slam. People play Deck of Lunacy, and it converts your 10 mana, your Yogg boxes or whatever, your 10 mana stuff into 7 cost. And yeah, Nagrand Slam is the best hunter spell in Mage.
In Mage, yeah.
Yeah. So, all right, let's talk scores.
Flame Strike? Nope, Nagrand Slam.
Hey, I mean,
Yeah. So, unfortunately, I don't see anybody playing this. It's a 1 for me. Sheep,
Yep.
how about you?
Yep. It's a one.
One. Yeah, one.
All right. Well, that was easy. Let's talk about the interesting card that we've been waiting for. So this is a 2-mana spell called Ignite. It reads, deal 2 damage, shuffle an Ignite into your deck that deals 1 more damage. So if I understand this correctly, it's going to deal the 2 damage, and this can go face. It does not say minion. Then it will go into your deck, and it will now be 2 mana, deal 3 damage. And then that will once again shuffle in again and scale upwards. So it's infinite burn, basically, that you can shuffle into your deck. So there is many different ways we could play this card. Nate seems to, or Sheep wants to talk about the OTK, which seems like a really, really cool idea. I can also see it going into basically any mage deck, really. Like we have Forgotten Torch that, that does 3 and then it does 6 later. This is something that you could include in, just a Reno deck as a one of that you continuously get burn. I don't know if it slots into a Secret Mage, but it could, because you're always looking for burn. It just seems like a great card that I'm playing Mage. I can put this into my deck, and it continuously just provides more damage. Either you're clearing a minion or you're just hitting face with it. I think that it's a great card. I think that there could possibly be, a downside of top decking something when when you're really looking for your Reno, you're looking for something and then you're pulling this. That can definitely happen. But it's just infinite burn. It really is infinite damage. It's a great card, and we have some meme potential with it. I'll let you guys talk on that a little more. Sheep, what do you think?
Yeah. So before I get into the OTK part, whenever you were like, oh, I don't know if we put it in Secret Mage or not, I think we absolutely do. And I think in this particular build that I'm kind of theory crafting as we're speaking right here, I switched from Sage back to Alaneth. I absolutely switched from Sage back to Alaneth, right? Boom, ignite, twice.
And you can run 2. You can run
turn.
2 of them.
Yep,
right?
Every turn. Top decking, good.
Wow. Yeah,
So,
that'd be.
I can see that happening.
and you can put 2 copies of this in, right? And so if you start drawing this, it's just like, all right, every turn, let me just draw 2 more.
So if they're the bottom 2 cards, then look, I drew. Boom! I did 4, spent 4 mana to deal 4 damage. Then the next turn, because I'm top decking, 4 mana to deal 6, and then 4 mana to deal 8, and then 4 mana to deal 10, and it gets out of hand real quick. So, from that alone, I think that this is gonna be really. I think we're gonna see play in one of the top tier meta decks, and it takes things that were previously a bad matchup in the kind of control decks that they exhausted all of our resources, and turns that into an inevitability engine, which is kind of cool.
Yeah.
Is that going to be the best version of Secret Mage? I don't know. Schmoopy Daddy will know better than we do, but it's one out, and I have a pretty good read on Secret Mage, as whenever I was like, yes, Sage is going to replace Alaneth. I'm still riding high on that one, and that was a while ago. As for the OTK, I think it's fairly obvious, and that we've got our Sanctum Chandler, we've got our Ignites. We make sure not to include, a whole lot, or, hopefully any more spells so that it's always going to hit the ignites. And then we get a couple of girls or a couple of our sorcerer's apprentices, and then we just go. And every time we cast an ignite, we draw an ignite. And then we cast another ignite and we draw another ignite. Easy
Yeah.
peasy.
Yeah.
So it's a not too big of a thinker for how to get to that OTK. Also, pretty easy to set up, which is kind of nice. Just really the hardest thing there is going to be drawing the sorcerer's apprentices, right? Because we've got a tutored draw for elementals. We've got tutored draw for spells with the star scryers, stuff like that. So the hardest part, I think, is going to be getting the sorcerer's apprentices. But
Yeah.
that's the OTK.
I mean, maybe we start running Witchwood Pipers again. This is draw
Yeah.
your lowest cost minion from your deck. I mean,
Yeah.
we can tutor
So-
draw, right? So if we do, what is it? Witchwood Piper draws lowest cost minion from your deck, or the other one I was just looking at was the Sandbinder that draws an elemental from your deck.
Yeah.
And so like we can tutor the draws, and then all you got to do, right? You need one Sorcerer's Apprentice and the Sanctum. What's it called? Chandler or whatever.
Chandler. Yeah.
So we probably
and
want
like-
both apprentices because otherwise it only
Oh,
discounts
it costs one,
Ignite
right?
to
So yeah, we
one.
want both. We want both, but still, like it's easy to cycle as mage. Like there's already the build in Mozaki, right? That's just stall. Okay, so I've got my ice blocks and my frost novas and lots of draw, and that's all I really need. I mean,
So there's a lot more of a downside for the Sanctum Chandler because it draws a spell. You have to cast a fire spell, but then the draw is just a spell.
oh, so
we
you really do
wanna
have
be
to,
running
yeah.
pretty much only minions, and there are minions that tutor. The downside for
You hem
know,
it first.
well, and like with the Star Scryer, if we're pulling the lowest cost out of our deck, that could get us those instead of the Sorcerer's Apprentices. But okay, cool. Then that means we get our ignites and we continue to churn towards our combo. So it's definitely more of a meme combo because of the restrictions that Chandler has. I'm gonna be clear about that one. It's definitely more a meme because of that. But it's gonna be fun.
Well,
All right.
Wait, hold on. So, wait, before we score, I do see one other
Yeah,
potential for this Ignite. We were talking a couple turns ago about the first flame, second flame, and the potential of going in Mozaki. And I think actually I'd probably stick this in instead because there's so much cycling in that deck. Cool. Let me use this to do 2 damage, shuffle it back in, and when I draw, then it does 3, then it does 4, whatever. Like there's so much, and if I'm comboing off with Mozaki, like there's some times when we have to use our like ice lances early so that we don't die, or so we need to freeze something. And there's so much draw in that, especially with cram session towards the end, that drawing a couple of these as they start to do more and more damage is some potential to, I don't want to say alternate win con, but like a little bit. I'm curious to try dropping this into Mozaki just to see if it works.
So I haven't played a ton of Mozaki Mage but from what little I have played and watched, I think that having the first flame may be a little bit more advantageous just because it's 2 spells that are in your hand.
That's true. No, it's true. Yeah.
And so that's 2 ticks towards, the Mozaki combo.
That's true. That's a good point.
Which is the only advantage that First Flame really has over Ignite, because the inevitability engine of Ignite is definitely much better.
Yeah. Well, a solid card regardless.
Oh, yeah.
Before we score, I just wanted to comment on something about Chandler really quick. I don't know if you guys saw Soddle's tweet where he wrote, "Could I be any more of a mage minion?" And then like no one in the comments got it. Everyone's like, no, that's kind of a crappy mage minion. I don't know what you're talking about. But for anybody who's watched Friends out there, that was a Friends joke, okay?
Uh-huh.
All right, so let's see our scores on Ignite. So for me, I think Ignite is going to be in a lot of different mage decks. I don't think it's going to be a meta-defining card with a new archetype, but I definitely think it's going to see play, whether it be in OTK, whether it be in Secret Mage, whether it be in LPG, Reno decks. I think we are going to see this card. So for me, this is a 4-star card. Sheep.
Wow, 4. Huh.
Did I catch you by
went back
surprise with
and
that one?
a little bit, yeah, because I was going back and forth of, if it was just the meme, then I was going to give it a 2. But then the possibility of slotting it into Secret Mage in particular, but not necessarily being like the archetype. I was going to go 4, but I thought that one was going to be bold. I think I'm still sticking with my 4 just because I think giving Secret Mage the inevitability engine is good. Whether or not it's necessary, we'll kind of see. But that's where I am with it. What do you think, Nate?
I had given it a 4 as well. There's so much versatility here. It's not just like, hey, you can slot it into. I'll slot it into Reno LPG. I'll slot it into Secret Mage. Slot it into Mozaki. Slot it into whatever, and maybe it works. Maybe it doesn't. And we might, we'll experiment with it. But the power level definitely feels strong to me. So yeah, I like it. I like it a lot.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's move on to our next card. It's an epic minion named Clumsy Courier. 7 mana, 4/5 with the text Battle Cry. Cast the highest cost spell from your hand. Now, when I first saw this card, the wheels start turning. You start thinking, once again, LPG stuff. You think Yogg Box, that sort of thing. And then I started thinking, we already have this card. We can do this already in a couple different ways. We have Dragon Caster, which is 6 mana, but that's reliant on having a dragon in your hand, which, you were playing Caligos and others like to have this effect. We also have Totolan Pilgrim, which would, pull something from your deck, but that's 8 mana, so that costs more. But then I started thinking at 7 mana, we have Ink Master Solia, right? Which is the same cost, and we don't really play this card very often. And with Ink Master, you actually get to select the card, do you not? Mm-hmm, the next spell you cast is 7 mana. Now with Clumsy Courier, it's cast the highest one in your hand. So if you're sitting on an ice block or something that's currently sitting in your hand, you're stuck. You can't play this card. Well, you could. It's going to play the ice block, right? But this is reliant on what is currently in your hand. You don't get to select it. You're hoping that your hand's sort of going to work out. So it doesn't seem like the best way to accomplish what you want to do, unless you want to use this in some sort of a different way.
Just play it with Bran.
Play it with Bran, yeah. Then I'll do it twice.
Hey, I actually have a question. How do you think that this interacts with Counterspell?
It gets around Counterspell, which was exactly going to be my point.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Well, Sheep, take it away, Sheep. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I still don't think that we're probably playing this because, like you said, we can't choose, and sometimes I may want to choose, for example, the ice block, and sometimes I may want to choose the LPG. But being able to get around Counterspell seems pretty important.
Did they clarify that, or did they demonstrate it, or do we?
They didn't. I'm just going based off of how the interactions have previously gone, and the fact that Clumsy Courier is the one casting it rather than you. Just kind of like how whenever we get to Grand Magus Antonidas, if you have spell damage, he doesn't have spell damage. from the same vein, if Clumsy Courier is the one casting it, then you're not, and so it shouldn't be procced by Counterspell. Just how things have worked historically and how the mechanics of the game have worked up to this point. That would be being consistent, is that Clumsy Courier would get around Counterspell. But we're already not running Master Solia. That doesn't get around Counterspell, but if we're playing a card just to get around Counterspell, that seems like I would rather just play a cheap spell in my deck to get around it instead of a 7-mana 4/5. If that makes sense. Like I'd rather play a Ray of Frost that then gets procced, and then I play my LPG or something like that. I think the flavor is great. I think that the effect is powerful. I think it just costs a little too much, and I think for this effect it kind of should. If it had a bigger body attached to it, then I wouldn't be quite as down on the card. But it's a 7-mana 4/5, so that's kind of where I am with it. What do you think, Nate?
I'd like to talk about the art for a minute.
Yes.
It's very cute, and yeah, no, my notes compared it to Inkmaster Solia and to Dragoncaster, and I really don't see it replacing either of those. And so, like, I mean, if you open this in a pack and you don't have Dragoncaster or Inkmaster Solia and you want to play LPG, then go for it and try it. Like,
Yeah.
I don't even want to call it a budget sub because it's an epic. So, I mean, you have to kind of build around. And the reason that Dragoncaster works so well is because there's so many, not so many, but there's enough dragons in LPG Mage to like make it work. And it runs a few other spells, and that's the bummer, is like you don't get to pick. And so there's some unforeseen potential here. I mean, this would be goofy, right? Like the ultimate meme potential is I've got 2 Yogg boxes, this and a Bran. And like, cool, yeah, let me play Bran Clumsy Courier Yogg box and see all the crazy shenanigans that happen. Like, I want to see that video, but I don't really want to play it in my deck. So it's a neat substitute if you need to, but I wouldn't run it over the other because you don't get to pick.
Alrighty. Well, let's see how we rate this. I don't want to, but I'm gonna give it a 2 over a 1, only because of the fact that if there's a meta that is running rampant with counter spells and oh my Yoggs, then this is a way of getting around it. And if you have this card, you can play this card, but I would play the other ones over this. So I call this extremely fringe. I'm giving it a 2. It still accomplishes what you want in the deck if it lands. Like I said, extremely fringe. This is like a 1.5 verging on a 2, but I got to give it the 2 just because it still does the thing, just not very well. Cheap.
That is fair, and I'm gonna go with the 1. I think that if Counterspell is that prolific, then we just run more spells to try and proc it. Outside of that, I know that kind of
You broke our streak.
Yeah, I know. But then we'd probably pull out the Tortolan Pilgrim and all that. But yeah, unfortunately, I broke our streak of being unanimous. So, what do you think, Nate?
I gave it a 2. It feels super fringe to me. I mean, it just feels like a sub for those cards that we were talking about. The body's not bad at a 4/5, and there's like some potential with Bran, but like I don't think it's optimal. But I think that there's potential, so it's a 2 for me.
Okay. Well, streak over, but yeah, you never know. We could pick it up. We'll see. Up next, we have the Mage quest line, which is Sorcerer's Gambit, and so it reads: cast a Fire, Frost, and Arcane spell. Reward, draw a spell. Its next part is Stall for Time. Once again, cast a Fire, Frost, and Arcane spell. Reward, discover one. We move on to the next, Reach the Portal Room. And then once again, we cast another Fire, Frost, and Arcane spell. And then we get Arcanist Dawn Grasp, which is the 5 mana 7/7 that reads Battlecry. For the rest of the game, you have spell damage +3, which is pretty nutty to have spell damage +3 for the rest of the game. Now, here's the question. Do I want to jump through these hoops 3 different times in this order to be able to do this? Like, my issue is if you're doing something like Mozaki, where it doesn't matter what order you play your spells in, you can play whatever spell you want as long as, it's 0 or 1, you got your apprentices down, whatever it is, you can just keep firing everything off. It doesn't matter. You're pumping up your Mozaki. This, you need to do them in order. You want to cast the Fire, the Frost, and the Arcane. So you're going to have to hold back your other Fire spell. You're going to have to hold back your Arcane spell that you don't want to play yet. You can't play them just willy-nilly like you normally would in any of the other builds. You have to play them in this order. So I feel like that's a big hindrance to the archetype, which to me makes this a little bit worse than the others, maybe a lot worse. I don't know. Not my favorite. Sheep, what do you think?
Yeah, I think that it's got a big hurdle to cross, but then once you've crossed the hurdle, you've got a really kickin' rad reward. I don't know how best to capitalize on that reward, and I've kind of scratched my head a decent amount, and I'm still a little bit unsure. But I know that Nate earlier mentioned that he's got something in the pipeline, so I'm going to go ahead and kick it over to Nate before just kind of saying I don't know a few different ways.
It's not good. I think I know where this lands, and I don't think it's good. The only place that I can really see this quest line going is in like a no minion mage. If I'm doing all spells, my whole deck is nothing but spells and discover stuff. Like you can proc the quest and make it happen. Mm-hmm. And so that's it. It's nothing brilliant or anything, but I think that's because okay, your fire spells, we're gonna have some of those. Your arcane spells, those are like some minor AoE or some like draw type cards. Your arcane intellect and stuff like that. And then your frost spells, like. That's the only place I really see this happening. And frankly, that's a standard deck. I mean, I don't see myself ever playing this in Wild. It doesn't fit in anything. So, I don't know. If I'm going to experiment with it, that's where I'll try it. But even then, it's definitely, you have to build around. And you have to be playing a lot of spells, right? Because in order to complete this quest, I have to do at least 9 spells. Mm-hmm. And so it feels kind of slow.
And in Wild, no minion mage in Wild is a lot worse because you can get the weirdest things, right?
Well, yeah,
if you're playing,
I imagine we would not play Deck of Lunacy in Wild.
No, you get so much.
The reason my Deck of Lunacy was so powerful is because it was a 4-set meta in standard, right?
Yeah.
Well, and that's why, you could guarantee, we were talking in the chat earlier, okay, I run Flame Strikes and it's going to convert it. The only things I can think it's going to convert to is Nagrand Slam and then the Druid one that gives everything +4/+4, whatever it's called. I don't know what.
Survival of the Fittest.
Survival of the Fittest. And I remember getting angry when I would always get Survival of the Fittest and my opponents would always get in a Grand Slam.
Oh no.
And there's no other 10-cost spells, right? I mean,
yeah,
there's Yogg-Box, but it's a mage class, so it has to be non-mage class. So there's no way I would play.
It can be any of them, but Yogg-Box is no longer in standard. It just rotated.
That's why. Well, yeah. See, I never know what rotates. I don't have a good read on that. It's too much Wild. But we've got what 7 years worth of cards in Wild. Like if you play Deck of Lunacy, talk about random Mage. Like it'd be fun. It'd be fun. Like I'd play it in casual, and but not competitively. But I could see, that's where I would attempt to make this quest work. I haven't looked at the deck recipes yet. And if I had to guess, like the deck recipes are probably all these quest lines. That would be my guess. So whatever. I mean, this is cool. I love like the theme of it. It tells a story. Okay, Dawn Grasp is captured and trying to escape, and then they escape, and now they have extra spell damage. Like that's really cool.
Kind of like Gandalf.
Yeah. Kind of like Gandalf. I love it. But I don't see this being good.
Yeah.
There's like the fun versus the good, and sometimes you can have both, like the Hunter one, and this one is just like, oh, fun, good. Oh, it's way down here. So, I mean,
yeah, the Hunter stomps this, right?
Oh, yeah.
All right. Well, let's vote on it. Unfortunately, I have to be the fun police and give this a 1. Sheep.
Wee-oo. 1.
Oh yeah, I gave it a 1 too. It was an easy one, unfortunately.
Yeah.
All right, one more card here.
Speaking of easy ones.
Oh god.
Grand Magus Antonitis.
Bum 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 bum.
Of Antonitis is here. We've been waiting for so long, and he's back. 8 mana, 6/6 battle cry. If you've cast a fire spell on each of your last 3 turns, cast 3 fireballs at random enemies. Womp womp womp. I have to make sure I played a fire spell each turn for 3 turns prior to this, probably compromising optimal turns. And then I get to fire 3 random fireballs at enemies. So if we're facing a token deck, they could just, kill off some 1/1s, some 2/2s. If like there's a random chance that you're on turn 8 and your opponent doesn't have a board, which probably isn't going to happen, they're all going to go face. But you are on turn 8. They just had turn 7. So their turn 7 was probably, building a board or something. And so you're going to put this down on turn 8, and we're going to cast some fireballs. Hopefully they hit the things that you want them to hit. Seems way too random. I just hope that like his intro sounds great, and like he does like when they all fire off. Yeah. But yeah, this is underwhelming for me, and it's expensive, and it seems quite conditional. Sheep, where are you on this one?
I'm completely with you. Like I'm trying to think of ways that it could be good. Like, cast 3 fireballs at all enemies. Okay, a little too OP. Cast 3 fireballs at the opponent's face.
Yes, please. I would play it.
Maybe a little too good too.
Yeah.
But 3 fireballs at random enemies is...
honestly, I'm surprised it didn't say at random targets, and you play this and you get 3 to the dome.
I want this to be good because in my Fireside like pre-order opening, I opened Grand Magus and Gold, but even in Standard, it's I don't think it's gonna be good. So
it's just really conditional. Like we've complained in the past at, I think the last time we did one of these reviews, whether it was the full set or the mini set, we were talking about all these elementals, and it's like, oh yeah, for this to be good, you have to play an elemental last turn, and that's a stretch. And now we're talking 3 turns in a row, dude. Like that's hard, and there's not that many fire spells, and not all of the fire spells are good. And then I got to draw the spells, and it's really tricky. And so in order for me to do that, the payoff would have to be amazing. And like 3 fireballs to the enemy minion. Okay. or for the to the enemy hero, I mean, okay, I would try it. I would try it because that's, we're talking. You could.
Boom, 18 damage.
Yeah, I mean, you could maybe kill them that way. And it just seems too difficult to pull off, or not worth the trouble. Like, you'd have to build around this card to make it work, and then is it even worth it? So, yeah, you feel super bad when it hits minion, and
Yeah, all that effort and womp womp.
it's cool. The art is awesome. It's like Gandalf on his horse. It's great.
Yeah, after Sheep said Gandalf, I was totally thinking about that. Super cool.
Here he is on Shadowfax.
Yeah, Shadowfax and Gandalf the Purple.
All right, what
So-
do we think about this card? I unfortunately have to give this a 1 because it's just not. It's not good. 8 mana does way better things in Wild. Sheep, what do you think?
You said it great. It's a 1.
Yeah, that's a 1 for me as well.
Okay, well that wraps up Mage then, now doesn't it?
That wraps up Mage for us. So we will call it a day for the Mage class and then transition to Paladin next. Thank you everyone for joining us.